All right, I think we're recording. Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of News on China, New Kids on the Blockchain. So,
Oh, you kept that one from us. Very good.
yeah, you know what? It ties into our story. That's always a surprise. If everybody doesn't know, I always surprise them with what the episode is going to be called. And we got into this habit of changing it all the time. But most of you already know Tings and Marco from News on China over on their channel. And what we do is usually weekly. We missed last week. We go through some of the most interesting headlines that we came across during the week. But this week, we're just going to focus on two. We're going to try to cut this episode down in length a bit, aren't we?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
One can always dream.
We can promise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have actually news, right, from last week.
Yeah. I mean, one thing is that we have some new social media presence. We're now on Twitter in Spanish and Portuguese.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll have to drop those links down below.
For sure. And also we have some Instagram. It's just in English right now, but so we can drop the links afterwards, but people can find it on dongshengnews.org for all the links and stuff like that.
And the new website.
Yeah. The website is also newly revamped, so it's pretty exciting times here at Dongsheng.
You guys are expanding. Wow, very busy, very busy. Okay, for sure. Well, we'll drop those links in the description. So what we'll do then first is let's get right into your last video. So now this is from last week, right? We're just doing we're doing two stories from last week, and then we'll follow up on the missing stories for next week. All right, so we will play the 60-second episode that usually is on their channel over on News on China, and then we will continue from there. Great clip as always. So we'll get right into this. So what do you guys want to talk about first from that?
Sure. So we have two stories we want to talk about from that. I'm going to talk about one I know that, Daniel, you're really interested in, which is Bitcoin. Okay. So last week, I mean, it's following a series of months where a lot of attention has been on Bitcoin, but the State Council announced a first real, let's say, crackdown on Bitcoin mining and kind of reaffirmed the kind of conditions on trading behaviors. There's two angles on it. One is around the reducing financial risk from the state perspective, and the second is energy consumption. So the first is that China has always had an ambivalent relationship to Bitcoin, and just kind of stepping back a bit, it's a decentralized currency, so it means that it's not controlled by any entity like a bank, or unlike paper money, like the traditional money we think of as money, is not backed by a country. So all of these transactions, though they're recorded using blockchain, back to the New Kids on the blockchain technology, but it's also recorded quite anonymously. So we can't really think of cryptocurrency like money in any traditional terms. And then a second clarification is that it's also not quite mining. There's no like people going into the ground digging up coins. And here, Daniel, you can also jump in to clarify because you're more the expert than anything. So these transactions that happen to exchange cryptocurrency requires a process of verification, and that verification process is the mining. And in China, though trading in Bitcoin has been illegal, the actual mining process has not been. In the last few years, there's been kind of different controls. In 2013, for instance, the central bank banned financial institutions from using and trading cryptocurrencies. And in 2017, also on different kinds of financial platforms, it was banned. And we've seen, and we've been covering also in News on China, the rise in the digital yuan as a kind of counter proposal. We even talked on this show about the DCEP, the digital currency payment, and the kind of trying to expand into international sphere. But it's important to note that digital yuan is not a cryptocurrency. It's a digital currency, but not a cryptocurrency. Okay.
Right.
So there's that part about the kind of financial, fears within China. But I think the kind of bigger story here, one of the motivations, is the huge energy consumption that is behind crypto mining. Because basically it's like, some people call it like an energy currency, because it's huge, requires huge computer processing power to try to do the quickest calculations to win the reward of the Bitcoin. And just to give a sense, and I was blown away by this fact, is that to mine 1 Bitcoin requires 100 megawatts of electricity. That's equivalent of watching a TV for 98 years consecutively. That's for mining 1 Bitcoin. And there is in the world a cap of 21 million Bitcoins. So, I mean, we do know someone that might have a few of those, but we won't say who they are. But it's impressive, when you actually count it at an international scale. Yeah, exactly. Billions of
TVs for
for 98 years at a time, just to mine the Bitcoins that exist in the world. But I mean, right now, global Bitcoin mining is at 121 terawatt hours per year. That's the equivalent of the total consumption of mid-sized countries.
Argentina, for instance.
Ukraine, the Netherlands, know. Right. And within that, China is the biggest global miner. And almost 2/3, about 65% of the world's crypto mining happens in China. So there's a huge vested interest to address this from various angles, but specifically because China, we know, has a huge commitments around of energy consumption. Right. Because largely still, a lot of the crypto mining still is based on non-renewable fuels. In Mongolia, as a region with big crypto mining that we've seen, like beginnings of shutdowns of mines, it's responsible for 8% of the world's Bitcoin mining, but 85% of the energy there is still coal-based. So this kind of transition to cleaner energy is probably a vital question in China, but also for the world.
Right.
So we've been seeing some of this stuff. There's, even in other regions, like going to Sichuan or Yunnan or even Xinjiang, where there are cleaner energy sources, maybe hydropower and that, but doesn't really solve the long-term problem because relying on hydropower, there's also dry seasons. There's increasing energy demands from competing sectors. How do we deal with the question of climate change? It's quite an essential thing of our moment.
Right.
So with this, also one interesting thing that we're going to publish this week is that Greenpeace is also following China's digital sector and came out with a report last week. And so it's not just about Bitcoins when you think about it, it's actually digital sector's energy footprint in the world. So just a reminder for your viewers is that China is expecting to peak at national emissions level at 2030. But what they're seeing in this report is that the digital sector is not going to peak until 2035, with like 5G expecting to increase their energy consumption to 5-fold and data centers increasing twice. So we're talking about a huge rise still to come before it can kind of level out and then really do a proper transition into clean energy. So this is a story to stay, tuned with, and it's going to be quite defining for the rest of the world, how they're going to move their digital sector into cleaner energy.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, I've been into blockchain tech and stuff like that for a while, and or at least from an investment point of view as well. And so I think the digital yuan, depending on how you define the word, could be classified as a cryptocurrency. Just it's not a decentralized cryptocurrency. It's a centralized cryptocurrency. Still blockchain technology, but it's got controls in place. So I guess that might, come into play for them wanting to ban the mining of Bitcoin. There are a lot of counter arguments out there to the energy argument that people try to use. How valid they are or not, people can evaluate it on their own. So one of them is comparing it to gold in terms of looking at it as a new store of value. And when you look at the environmental impacts of mining and the emissions of transport and all this stuff, Bitcoin still comes ahead in some of the calculations that people have put forward. I haven't gone through it in a lot of depth. Then there's a comparison they make in terms of if we move towards decentralized finance, you have to look at the energy that's consumed by the legacy banking industry in terms of their data centers, the Visa centers, all of this stuff. And it doesn't paint such a clear-cut picture. There are things that you could consider in this way. Bitcoin, if it became used as a currency, there's a few things they need to work out before that happens. Instead of a store of value, that would go right up against Visa and some of these other kind of these other companies. So then you could look at, okay, well, what could it possibly take away in terms of energy use in our legacy financial system? So there's a different, I'll try to find some articles maybe and put it in the description of this, but there's a few different things to think about here. But without a doubt, it does take a huge amount of energy. There were some people that looked at the overall energy sources being used. I think over in Greenland or Iceland, they're using the deep kind of it's the underground heat. There's a word for that kind of energy, using that energy source. And they found that, again, I haven't looked into it and verified it, that the majority of the energy usage comes from renewable energy sources. I haven't verified that myself. These are the counter arguments that are out there. The idea of a decentralized currency, there's a lot of people pushing for it just to have kind of control of their own money and things like that. Sure. The reason it uses so much energy is because of it requires a lot of computational power, and that's for the reason why it's so secure. If somebody were to try to hack or run what's called a double spend on the blockchain network, they would have to expend an incredible amount of energy, and it wouldn't even end up making sense in the end. And this is why Bitcoin, in 10 plus years now of its existence, never ever once has been hacked. The blockchain hasn't been hacked. Maybe somebody's individual wallet has been hacked and they've lost their money, but the network itself has never been compromised. So there's something interesting there. I don't know exactly how to process the entire thing, because there's all kinds of different elements that come in too. Because when you look at these developing countries, one of the problems when the IMF and all of these kind of Western powers usually go in is they completely open up their country. They're not allowed to have capital controls. They're not allowed to kind of have this kind of stuff. So I don't know, and this is something I've got to look into myself also. I don't know how much Bitcoin could potentially hurt smaller developing countries if they do need to put capital controls in place while they're growing, so that wealth isn't just escaping the country. It'll be interesting to see what China does with the digital renminbi when they launch that as well, to see will they, because what we see, at least how when they're doing traditional projects in these countries, they go in and more or less they play by the rules of the country. They don't say, no, we're going to do it this way. There's no other choice, and we'll overthrow your government if you don't listen to us. They play by their rules. So I'm wondering if, because the digital renminbi isn't a decentralized currency, they have some level of control over it, whether they could put measures in place to still allow to prevent capital controls outflows from specific countries if they have that requirement, when they say, okay, we will use the digital renminbi, but these are our requirements. Maybe there are answers to these things already, but it's going to be an interesting thing that develops. I have quite a few friends who are in blockchain, so I might bring somebody on eventually to talk about this. But those are the different things I was thinking of when you were talking about it. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's really fascinating. I think there's a couple elements that we'll keep following, and look forward to the show you have about blockchain. I mean, we know that there's been huge investments that we've been covering in News on China that Chinese government has done in blockchain in the last 2 years. We mentioned the DCEP. I mean, this is a good question around how this is going to play into, internationalizing the yuan, reducing dollar dependency. There's these questions that you're bringing up now that's fascinating. And China now is also trying to respond with creating these like clusters of data centers. It's a story that we're going to be covering more this year, this week, and how they're going to try to address some of the inefficiencies around energy consumption and creating these kind of major hubs around data centers. So there's some interesting threads, and I'm sure we'll come back with it in a future episode as well. But fascinating.
Yeah,
stuff.
definitely. Yeah, no, I mean, online currencies for sure are the future, and the U.S. has really incentivized everyone to come up with a solution, and this is why I liked kind of Bitcoin also, is because the main global currency, the U.S. dollar, has been really heavily weaponized, and so this was a way out for some people, saying, okay, no, but the thing that I was thinking about recently, as I said, from an economics perspective, I don't know what the impact would be for smaller countries that do need some level of capital controls in place, and so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So you have another story as well too, if you're finished with the blockchain one. Yeah, this is a bit dated now, isn't it? But a very important story to cover, I think. So you go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah, we had this last week. We couldn't do the show, so we decided to bring, because this is first of all, I think it's good for this week. It's been a tough week in the channel with a lot of battles, good battles.
Oh, yeah.
So we said, okay, let's try to bring something a little bit more hopeful and try to bring some it's last week, actually Saturday last week. The Yuan Longping, the so-called the father of hybrid rice, died at age of 90 years old. So who is Yuan Longping? He's not so well known outside of China, but in China he is, like, as we saw, he is a hero, a real hero. He's a so-called, he was the guy who actually revolutionized the production of rice globally since the 60s. So he actually, just for you guys to understand what is the dimension of Yuan Longping in China. He died so more or less like
on the
22nd of May. And more than 100,000 people went to the streets in Changsha, the province of Hunan, to pay respect to him. And it was raining. It's like beautiful pictures you can see online of people, like even like taxi drivers giving free ride. Oh, if you're coming to Yuan Longping's funeral, it's free for you. Even on social media, of course, we know everything China has a huge impact in social media. So for instance, in Weibo, which is the Chinese Twitter, only on Sunday, there was 8.7 billion views about his, hashtags related to him. And this is amazing for somebody coming from other countries like us, because, which country in the world you would have such a mass mobilization to pay respect to an agronomist that was specialized in rice? Of course, if you think, everybody should do that, because rice is the staple food for literally billions of human beings. I come from a country, we eat rice every single day. There's no way to not eat rice. If you don't eat rice, because unfortunately the situation is it's really bad, which is actually happening right now in Brazil. But what he did actually was he created, this techniques of hybridization. This is actually a technique that is used to many plants, like dozens of plants. But when he started to work on that, it was still at the beginning of this technique in the 60s. So he was the one who actually started to do this with rice. He was, of course, inspired by all the hardship that China actually experienced in the 50s and the 60s, with a lot of people actually starve for political problems, for some mistakes in government policies, and also some natural disasters, some huge droughts that's also happened in the country. So the interesting story is that he was looking for new types of rice to try to improve the productivity, the yields of rice, and he actually found one special sort of white rice. Guess what? Where? in Hainan.
Okay.
In our beloved island of Hainan.
Oh, they didn't have pina coladas back then, though.
That's why I have to go to Hainan. Pay respect to him. He actually has a center of studies of center there. They all actually
nice. Okay.
developed in the last years. They're developing a type of hybrid rice that can grow in seawater, in salted water. And they are already increasing a lot the research and the development, and this could be something big in the next years. So in the 60s, he started to do this, and he actually in the 70s is where he were able to really develop this new strain of rice, and then he started to spread in China, first in China, then in the world. Just for you guys to have a idea, right now, today in China, 57% of the total planting area of rice in China are made with this hybrid rice developed by Yuan Longping. And then, of course, his team, he has a big team working in the last decades. So this means 60% of the production of rice in China, which is millions and millions of tons, it's comes from this hybrid rice that was developed by him. And there was an interesting data they were putting together this week, is that because of these techniques, and actually the improvement is around 30%. That was the average improvement in yield of rice in the last decades because of this technique made by Yuan Longping.
And they're actually now in the 5th generation, so they've been consistently increasing the yields.
Exactly.
Of this hybrid rice.
Exactly. And the number that they were putting together is that because of that, an extra of 70 million people a year in China are fed thanks to this improvement in the productivity of the rice. So this is a huge breakthrough. But then comes the second amazing part of the story, which is what we can call the rice internationalism. We already talked about the vaccine internationalism, or maybe
vaccine diplomacy. This is the rice.
Exactly.
Rice.
Rice diplomacy.
In US,
you want to feed the people. You want to give them vaccines.
Exactly. That's terrible.
Hard.
Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah.
So actually, this is one of the things that he strongly advocates since the 70s, since he started to do this research, which would be how to internationalize, how to spread this knowledge around the world. So there's hybrid rice planted now in more than 40 countries in the world, including United States, Brazil, India, Vietnam, Philippines, Madagascar, and actually many countries in Africa. And their team, they trained actually more than 14,000 technicians in more than 80 countries that came to China, or they send teams abroad to train the people. So it's amazing to think, it's the work that they have done. Imagine like countries in Africa, Madagascar, for instance. They have actually 16 pilots programs in Africa they developed. Madagascar is one of the main ones. They actually were able to triple the yields of rice from 2006 to 2019, thanks to these techniques and thanks to the training.
In regards to the training, is it still an ongoing program, or that training program is done? They went. Okay.
It is ongoing.
I feel kind of worried about mentioning this because if you know this, you know where I'm going with this. Like if the U.S. catches on to this and says, "Oh my God, this is something good that China is doing," they'll do what they did to the Cuban doctors. Cuba sends these doctors all around the world, and they're trying to villainize Cuba, and they're like, "This isn't working." So they say, "Oh, it's forced labor." And then, they list it as forced labor and try to, if that became a big story, what we're talking about now, if it became a big story internationally and people started paying attention to it, I'm so sure somebody would find a way. Somebody would find a way to undermine it.
I'm almost regretting of this show now, Daniel, because I think you might be right. Now I'm worried because that might be the the next fake news of the week.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
oh, the
They're
rice
sending
is
forced
wonderful.
labor around the world to plant rice. Oh my God,
That's so
I mean,
cool.
because when they try to get away with that Cuban doctor one, that was just it was beyond ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't make too much news, but they tried to do that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think this is actually something we cover in the Africa Weekly often, because that is one of the key forms of partnership. Is this week actually we're going to publish just today story about vocational training schools and how much of the learning has been taken from China to develop, especially in Ghana. It's mass, not just agricultural, but agricultural development has been huge, but engineering, science and tech, all the STEM areas. I mean, this is fundamental. And that means there's been tens of thousands of professionals going there, being on the ground in the farm fields, teaching the actual how to plant the crops. And one really interesting thing, I should have sent the image to you, but I'll show you on my phone. I don't know if I can. So here, interestingly, in Madagascar, one of the highest note that they have, for 35,000, I don't remember the name of the local currency, is about the hybrid rice.
From
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the impact they had in the.
I think we did the the currency conversion, something like 34 kwai. So it's not quite to buy a bag of rice here, but that's really cool.
That is really cool. Yeah.
So we found that gem for the Africa Weekly last week. And also seeing some of the exchanges of Yuan Longping with a lot of the African students, scientists, and
no, it's a huge impact internationally. I mean, for instance, already in the 90s, according to FAO, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, something around 20% of the production of rice in the planet came from the hybrid rice technique and all the technology that they developed. So this is, imagine, it's a lot of people in the world being fed by this technology, which is actually brings and this is related to this issue we're making jokes about. Oh, maybe now they're going to come after China because of rice diplomacy, but you know what? This is actually something that is actually the opposite of what big multinational companies of agribusiness does. Because imagine, so you want to exactly what I mean, Cargill, Bung, because what actually he created a new technique, which was revolutionary. It could increase a lot of production. I mean, he could have said, okay, I would just register my patent, and I'm going to sell this all around the world, and I'll become billionaire. He could become a huge billionaire. He said, no, let's share this knowledge with people. Let's train them, especially countries like Africa, like Asian countries, Latin America countries that really suffers of hunger until today and have rice as the main staple food. So this is amazing. And another interesting thing also that came out in all the stories was actually something that I mean, there's two guys who are two scientists that are considered like big heroes of the history of agriculture in the last decades. One is Yuan Longping. The other one is American one called Norman Borlaug. He actually did something similar to wheat. He also developed revolutionary techniques to improve massively the use of wheat. But guess what? Mr. Borlaug is actually worldwide famous. He's a US scientist. And guess what? In 1970, he was the winner of the Nobel Prize. Amazing. Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
But Yuan Longping never get the prize. Even considering that rice actually is more important, like globally in terms of consumption than wheat. So amazing that Nobel Prize
that is really remarkable when you consider the impact he had on the entire world, that he wouldn't have got that. And then we have like Barack Obama, who destroyed Libya. As you know, he's a Nobel Peace Prize winning war criminal, who destabilized Africa by destroying one of Africa's richest countries that were putting satellites in space for the continent and going to put together an African central currency. Like, what is going on? The Nobel Peace Prize, when you're growing up as a kid, you're like, oh, that sounds amazing. That sounds so nice. And you're like, hold on a second, But yeah, no, I mean, it's great. It's great that person got recognized. I mean, I love these stories about these people who create something that's going to, change the world, and they have a chance to just become incredibly wealthy, and they just give it away. There's another American too, Jonas Salk. He created the polio vaccine. Same thing. He could have made a lot of money off of it, and he said, no, this is as far, if I'm remembering the story correct, he just opened it up for everyone. Right. And I mean, I love stories like that. And the reason I mentioned Monsanto, though, it's these big capitalist corporate firms. They go in the opposite direction. It's not only about managing how much innovation you have on increasing yields. It's also about going in the opposite direction, providing something that doesn't reproduce, so that you have to buy new seeds every year.
Yeah.
And you contrast that to what Yuan Longping did, I mean, it's amazing.
And actually you have to buy tons of fertilizer, heavy chemicals, because this is how this is the package they sell. Because
right. It goes together with this.
It's going to resist the fertilizer. So it comes together, and it's very expensive for the farmers, especially for the small scale farmers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And guess what? Is not doing good for the planet Earth. So that's the thing. I think, yeah.
Yeah. When I was looking down, I just grabbed a few pictures. I searched for Yuan Longping, and you know what came up first? Take a look at this.
Oh!
I just did a search on Twitter, and there he is.
Oh, look at
yeah. You came up first, and then let's look at the tributes that he had. On the building here.
Did you see the drones? I think it was Guangzhou. They put up the 500 drone show. Gorgeous.
Yeah. The drones. With this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. And then another shot of I don't know if it's the same building or and then the processions. Like, to have a society that values this. They're not showing up for a pop star. They're not showing up for some famous movie star. They're showing up for somebody.
but that's. I was thinking when this happened last week. I was thinking that I was trying to remember in Brazil, what was the last time we saw such a mass mobilization
on this scale.
Yeah, it was. I remember. It was in 1994. It was from Ayrton Senna. Car race, Formula One driver, Brazilian hero. He died during the race.
I mean, that's fine, and that's fine too. I mean, that's fine to support sports stars and all of this stuff. But to have this also alongside that it's so just beautiful. It says so much about the society. There was a chart here. Let me see. You might have already covered a lot of this stuff, but let's see what it says.
That's exactly.
Yeah,
Madagascar in there as well.
Yeah, the hybrid rice yield is over 20% higher. You're saying in some places even more. Let's see what else we got here. I think you covered most of this stuff. It's been growing in 60 countries. It's his rice is growing in 60 countries, including Vietnam, India, Pakistan, Philippines, Brazil, the U.S., Bangladesh, Madagascar, and other countries.
It's
trained
8
over
million hectares around the world. 8 million hectares.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing. Yeah. All right. So
just slightly to the story. Last week we talked 2 weeks ago about astronauts and the respect for science, for this is a society that is fundamentally a peasant society and remembers that's roots. The importance of feeding the people, meeting that basic need first. Like, why would we bring the story around what significance Africa? Africa is still 1/5 of the country is suffering from hunger. This hunger is still an essential daily problem of most people in the planet, especially in the South. So, but then you create also a society that respects and builds its science, respects scientists, and that's I think indicative of what we're seeing with
absolutely. I also was thinking that we are now the world is living a pandemic. You get the three worst countries in the world right now. It's United States, Brazil, and India. And guess what? 3 countries run by extreme right wing. Of course, now U.S. changed a little bit, but Trump was most of the time was Trump. 3 extreme right wing, religious, fanatic presidents that just undermine science. That just made like months and months making speeches, undermining scientists, say, no, this is bullshit. This is just a little flu. You don't need to use masks. No, nothing's going to happen. Modi in India, he actually said that one day, say, oh, you guys have to go in your window and like hit your pants. So with the noise, the virus will go out. That's the president of the nation that now is being like 400,000 people infected every day. So, you see, there's such a contrast of a society that actually, respects science in this level. It's not by chance that they controlled the pandemic in 8 weeks, and still now we have some outbreaks.
It's not only it makes me think. Because it's not only about now. It's not only about fixing problems now. It's about what message are you sending to the next generation. Here in China, when the kids see that this guy, these are the rock stars of our country. These are the people that need to be celebrated. It creates something in them saying, "I want to be like that person." If your family is whatever Trump supporters and stuff like that, and you see your president that your parents worship, insulting Fauci or whatever it is, it's like the kids will be like, I don't want to be that person. It's right. It's about what kind of message it sends also. Yeah. So that's the other side benefit of seeing people come out and support people like this. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah. Thanks, Yuan Longping. Great job.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have anything else, or because this is a record? This is a record short time for us. If we manage to wrap up and
world record.
Yeah,
world record. Look at that. Under 40 minutes. Wow. Well, you know what? Then let's cut this while we're ahead. Because we were always trying to find a way to shorten this, but we will be back, hopefully, if our schedules align next week for your next set of stories. And for everybody who's not already subscribed to News on China, follow the link below, head over there and subscribe also so you can stay on top. So even if you miss one of our episodes, you can still see what the headlines are in the shorter 60-second videos. So that's it, guys. Thanks for joining. Good seeing you guys again, too. Yeah.
See ya.